Imagine, just for a second, walking into this massive industrial incinerator, right? And you just casually toss $120 million in perfectly good venture capital cash straight into the flames.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and then you just stand there and proudly watch it burn to ash. I mean, it sounds like absolute madness.
Fully.
But what if I told you that in the world of early stage tech startups, that exact scenario plays out basically every single day?
It really does.
Like, maybe not with a literal fire, but the financial destruction is just as real. And honestly, it's just as tragic.
It is, yeah. It's the great paradox of venture building, I think. Because we have this really romanticized vision of how companies are born.
Right, the whole Silicon Valley myth.
Exactly, like the glossy magazine version,
Yeah.
where a genius founder raises this massive seed round, hires an absolute army of developers, and then they lock the doors for like 18 months in stealth mode.
Just totally off the grid.
Right. And then they supposedly emerge with this flawless product that just instantly changes the world. But the data, I mean, the cold, hard market reality, it tells a completely different, much darker story.
And that reality is exactly why we are doing this deep dive today. So if you are listening to this right now, whether you're a seasoned founder prepping for a board meeting, or maybe you're someone daydreaming about finally leaving your corporate job to build that app you keep talking about, or you're just insanely curious about the actual mechanics of how billion-dollar empires are built from literally nothing, you have arrived at the perfect moment.
Absolutely.
Because today, we are completely dismantling that myth. We are taking down the well-funded stealth mode startup narrative, and instead we're going to explore the absolute superpower of frugal engineering.
Yeah, and we were pulling from an incredible wealth of knowledge today to do this. We're specifically focusing on two highly comprehensive masterclass documents, episode 18 and episode 19, from an organization called StartupLanes.
Such a good source.
It really is. And if you aren't familiar, StartupLanes is this elite global business ecosystem. I mean, they operate across 56 cities and 15 countries.
That's massive.
It's huge. And the thing is, they aren't just theorists sitting in an ivory tower. They have facilitated $111 million in institutional funding across, I think, 136 high-growth startups.
So they've actually seen the battlefield.
Exactly. They see the entire telemetry of what works and what fails on a global scale.
And at the absolute center of all that data is their founder and CEO, Dr. Shishir Gupta. Now, this man's background is intense. I mean, he holds a PhD in venture capital alongside a law degree and an MBA in finance.
Just a ridiculous amount of expertise.
Seriously, he understands the mechanics of business at a molecular level. And Dr. Gupta establishes this core premise in these documents that just completely flips the traditional narrative on its head. He argues that a minimum viable product, an MVP, it is not just a half-baked, crappy version of your final software.
Right, and that is such a critical distinction to make early on here. People hear minimum viable and they instantly think mediocre.
Like it's just broken code.
Exactly. But Dr. Gupta redefines the MVP entirely. He states that an MVP is a fully baked, high-precision, hypothesis testing engine.
A hypothesis testing engine. I love that phrasing.
Right. Its singular purpose is to eliminate systemic ignorance at maximum velocity. Like, you are not building a product to get rich on day one. You are building an experiment to find out exactly how wrong your assumptions are as cheaply and as quickly as humanly possible.
Let's really dig into that concept of systemic ignorance. Because the traditional playbook actively encourages that ignorance, the standard operating procedure for a lot of these tech hubs is you come up with an idea, you raise a massive pre-seed check, and then you just hide.
Yep, stealth mode.
Yeah, you lock yourself and your engineers away, obsessing over every single feature, every button color, every database schema.
And then you launch, and you hit a total brick wall. Because if you look at historical post-mortem data from organizations like CV Insights, for example, over 42% of startup failures are directly attributable to one single fatal cause.
42%, that's almost half.
Almost half. And it's not running out of cash because of bad accounting. It's not getting outcompeted by a rival. It is building a product for which there is absolutely zero market need.
Wow.
Yeah, 42%. It is the leading cause of startup death on Earth.
Which is just terrifying if you're a founder, because founders don't usually fail because they lack vision, or because they lack work ethic. They work insane hours.
Cool.
They fail because they spend their entire runway over-engineering a highly complex solution to a problem that literally nobody is willing to open their wallet to solve. Like, building a finished product before proving buyer demand is just operational suicide.
It really is. And what the StartupLanes sources highlight so brilliantly is the unique danger of being well-funded and unvalidated.
Right.
Because we tend to think of capital as a pure advantage, right? More money equals better chances. But abundant capital in the early validation stage actually breeds lazy problem solving.
How so?
Well, it acts as a buffer against reality. When a founder has $1 million sitting in the bank and they hit an operational hurdle or a customer complaint, their first instinct is financial. They buy a massive piece of enterprise software, or they hire 3 more engineers to build a custom microservice to fix it.
Instead of just picking up the phone, calling the user, and figuring out what is actually fundamentally broken in the workflow.
Yes,
So
exactly.
it's like throwing money at a wall so you don't have to look at the cracks.
Precisely. They build these multi-tenant architectures, custom admin interfaces, and incredibly complex payment routing systems before they have even validated if a single human being will hand them $1 for the core service. It is premature optimization, and it's fatal.
Which brings us to, my favorite part of the research for today, that ultimate cautionary tale of premature optimization. While we were going through the source material, this story just stood out as the absolute pinnacle of this delusion. We have to talk about the spectacular implosion of Shoestring.
Oh man, the $120 million squeeze.
Right.
If there is a defining historical monument to the perfection fallacy, it is Juicero.
Okay, let's paint the picture for you if you haven't heard this story. The year is 2013. Silicon Valley is absolutely flush with cash and just intoxicated on its own hype cycle. The founder, Doug Evans, is this really charismatic raw food evangelist, and he decides he isn't just going to sell juice. He is going to revolutionize the entire global juice supply chain.
Of course he is.
Right. So he pitches a proprietary, cloud-connected, hardware-as-a-service ecosystem.
Now, if we pause here for a second and apply Dr. Gupta's frugal engineering framework,
Yeah.
how would you test this?
Right, the cheap way.
Exactly. You would chop up some fresh, organic produce, put it in a branded bottle, take it down to a farmer's market in San Francisco, and just see if people will pay $8 for it.
Yeah.
You measure the actual human desire for the end product, which is the juice.
But Evans completely rejects that approach as primitive. He wants a technology empire. So what does he do? He goes into total stealth mode for 3 years. 3 years of secrecy.
Wow.
He hires top-tier engineers to build an absolute monster of an appliance. We are talking about custom aircraft-grade aluminum latches, a custom silicon chipset with an internal Wi-Fi module, an optical QR code scanner designed to specifically read the proprietary expiration dates on his custom juice pouches, and the press itself. It exerted 4,000 pounds of electromechanical force.
Yeah, and the documents note that Evans actually boasted to investors that the Juicero machine exerted enough force to lift 2 Teslas.
That's insane. The juice.
Right. And the pitch worked. He convinced some of the most prestigious venture capital firms on the planet, including Alphabet's Google Ventures and Kleiner Perkins, to pump $120 million into this company.
Unbelievable.
$120 million spent in stealth without a single real-world customer validating the core economic model.
So fast forward to 2016, and they finally unveil this behemoth. The machine retails for $400, but that's just the hardware.
Yeah.
You also have to subscribe to buy their proprietary pouches of chopped fruits and vegetables for $5 to $8 each.
So expensive.
Yeah, and the engineering was aggressively restrictive. Like, if you tried to use the machine without a live Wi-Fi connection, the software bricked it. It refused to press.
You need internet for juice.
Exactly. If the optical scanner read the QR code and determined the bag had expired 1 minute ago, it refused to press.
And for a brief moment, the tech press was totally mesmerized. They called it the Keurig for juice. Investors were fixated on the recurring revenue model of the proprietary pouches. It looked like a total hardware triumph until April 19th, 2017.
This is the moment the matrix breaks. 2 reporters from Bloomberg News, Ellen Hewitt and Brad Stone, are sitting in their newsroom. They are looking at this heavy $400 aircraft aluminum machine, and they're looking at the heavy plastic pouch of proprietary chopped beets and kale. And they asked a terrifyingly simple question.
$1 million question.
A question that somehow across 4 years and $120 million of deep R&D, nobody at Juicero apparently ever bothered to test.
What happens if you just squeeze the bag with your hands?
Yes, the Bloomberg human hand test. It is a legendary piece of journalism. They set up a camera, put a glass on a table, grab the proprietary Juicero pouch, and just squeeze it with their bare hands. And in 16 seconds, raw, cold-pressed organic juice flows effortlessly into the glass.
It's so funny.
The human hands yielded the exact same amount of juice as the 4,000-pound force Wi-Fi connected machine, and arguably did it faster.
And they published a 30-second video of this experiment. The internet exploded.
Yeah.
I mean, the illusion of deep tech complexity was shattered instantly. Juicero hadn't built a revolutionary ecosystem. They had built a $400 over-engineered solution to a problem that was already perfectly solved by human hands.
It's just brutal.
And the fallout was incredibly swift. Within months, the company had to halt sales, offer full refunds, and eventually collapse into bankruptcy. Those custom aircraft aluminum presses were quite literally sold at liquidator auctions for scrap metal.
It's staggering. When I was reading this part of the deep dive, an analogy immediately jumped to mind to explain the mechanics of what happened here. Venture capital in the early validation stage, it acts exactly like a powerful synthetic painkiller.
Okay, I like that.
Right. Like when a patient takes a heavy painkiller, it doesn't cure the underlying disease. It just masks the symptoms. The patient feels invincible. They run around, they ignore the internal bleeding, and then they suddenly drop dead. Massive funding masked Juicero's fundamental disease, which was a total lack of product market fit until the runway ended and the company died.
That is a highly accurate way to frame it.
Yeah.
I mean, if they had just applied a frugal constraint, if they had handed out 50 of those juice bags to beta testers on day one without the machine, someone would have intuitively squeezed it with their hand.
Totally.
They could have saved $120 million, pivoted instantly, and just become a highly profitable organic juice delivery company. But the capital allowed them to ignore the customer.
Let me push back on this a bit, though, because I really want to explore the counter-argument here. A lot of technical founders, especially in deep tech or SaaS, are obsessed with the concept of the moat.
Right, defensibility.
Yeah, the idea is that you need to build heavy, complex, proprietary technology up front so that your competitors can't just copy you overnight. Doesn't the Juicer approach, for all its massive flaws, at least attempt to build a defensible moat through sheer engineering complexity?
See, that is the exact trap that lures brilliant engineers into building dead companies. Complexity is only a moat if it surrounds a castle that actually holds something of value.
Well, that's a good.
Defensibility is entirely irrelevant if nobody wants the core outcome you are defending. It just doesn't matter how deep and wide your moat is or how many alligators are in it if the castle itself is totally empty.
Right.
Building a 4,000-pound press is complex, yes, but it defended an outcome, squeezing a bag that no one needed defended. Dr. Gupta emphasizes this exact point in the sources. Complexity is often an illusion of progress. True progress in a startup is validated learning.
Building a moat around an empty castle. I love that. Okay, so if we accept that heavy capital and massive engineering complexity are actually traps in the early days, what is the alternative? How do we build the castle the right way, making sure there's actual treasure inside before we start digging the moat?
That requires a total paradigm shift in how a founder views limitations.
Yeah.
According to Dr. Shishir Gupta's philosophy, capital constraint is not an operational handicap. It is a supreme strategic filter.
A strategic filter. So you're saying the sheer lack of money actually forces you to be a better entrepreneur.
Exactly. Think about the mechanics of a $0 budget. When you have no money, you cannot buy your way out of a bad product. You can hide behind a $50,000 Facebook ad campaign that just forces traffic to your site.
You can't bribe people to care.
Right. You cannot hire an expensive PR firm to craft a narrative. You are stripped bare. You are forced to identify and solve a real-world problem so acutely, so painfully, that users will tolerate your bare bones, rough around the edges MVP, simply because it eliminates their daily suffering.
It's the ultimate lie detector test for value. If your app interface is super clunky, your logo looks like it was made in MS Paint, and it occasionally crashes, but people are still trampling over each other to use it every single day.
And then you got something.
You know, beyond a shadow of a doubt that you have struck a raw nerve in the market.
And the mathematical reality of this approach is incredibly empowering. The source material outlines what they call the infinite runway equation.
Okay, let's break that down.
So traditionally, startup runway is calculated as a simple division problem. It's your cash reserves divided by your net monthly burn rate. So if you raise $100,000 and you spend $10,000 a month on salaries, servers, and rent, you have exactly 10 months to live before the company dies.
Right, the clock is ticking. But the frugal engineering model changes the denominator. If my cash reserves are, say, $500 for my savings account, and I ruthlessly utilize free tools and my own sweat equity, so my monthly burn rate is exactly $0.
500 divided by 0. In practical startup terms, your runway is infinite.
Wow.
You cannot be killed by the calendar. You have the ultimate luxury of time. You can iterate, test, fail, pivot, and experiment forever until you finally find that true product market fit.
You essentially remove the ticking time bomb from the startup experience. I mean, that's huge. But to achieve that infinite runway, you can't just write cheap code. You have to change how you validate the idea itself. And the sources outline these fascinating frameworks. They call them MVP archetypes.
Yes, these are so clever.
These are basically methods to test the market without building the actual product.
Right, you aren't writing code. You are deploying behavioral traps to measure actual human intent. And the most famous of these is the smokescreen MVP. The entire purpose of a smokescreen is to test demand and, crucially, willingness to pay before you commit to building the back-end infrastructure.
The story of Buffer is the textbook example of this, isn't it?
It really is.
Buffer is a massive social media scheduling tool now. But when the founder, Joel Gascoigne, first had the idea, he didn't dive into API integrations with Twitter and Facebook. He built a basic 2-page website. Page 1 simply explained the value proposition. Here is what Buffer will do for you. And it had a button that said, plans and pricing.
And this is exactly where the behavioral trap is set. If a user clicks that button, they are taken to page 2, which displays 3 pricing tiers. A free tier, a $5 a month tier, and a $20 a month tier.
But the product didn't exist, like none of it was built. So when users selected the $20 tier and clicked buy, they didn't get a credit card checkout page. They got an email capture form that politely explained, we aren't quite ready for public launch yet. Leave your email and we will give you early access when we are live.
He was giving them fake pricing tiers to measure revealed preference rather than stated preference, because asking people, would you pay for this, in a survey is totally useless.
Oh, people lie in surveys all the time.
Constantly. But measuring how many people actually click a button that says $20 a month, that is hard data. Only after hundreds of people click those paid tiers did Joel actually spend a weekend coding the first functional version.
It's so smart. And Dropbox did something very similar. Drew Houston, the founder, knew that building a seamless cloud syncing architecture that worked perfectly across Mac, Windows, and Linux, I mean, that is a monumental engineering task. It would take massive capital and months of deep, complex coding, so he didn't build it.
No. Instead, he recorded a 3-minute explainer video. He used a localized, heavily constrained prototype that essentially only worked on his specific machine. It wasn't scalable at all.
Right.
And he narrated how the system would work for the user. And to ensure it hit the right audience, he embedded the video with highly specific inside jokes tailored for the Hacker News developer community.
Which is brilliant targeting. And the results were insane. That video went totally viral on Hacker News. The Dropbox beta waitlist exploded from 5,000 to 75,000 users in 24 hours. He spent $0 on digital ads. He validated the demand for the product completely through a video.
That is the power of the smokescreen. But there are times when a product is just too logistically complex to even fake in a video. You need to actually prove the operational model. And that is where the Wizard of Oz MVP comes into play.
I just love the name of this one. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain.
Exactly. The front-end user interface looks like a fully automated algorithmic software platform. It looks polished, but the back end, there is no algorithm. It is just the founders furiously doing the work manually behind the scenes.
The Zappos origin story is the perfect illustration of this Wizard of Oz mechanic. Back in 1999, Nick Swinmurn had a hypothesis. People will buy shoes online without trying them on first. Now, the traditional VC playbook would dictate that he raise millions of dollars, lease a massive warehouse, build a complex inventory management system, and secure wholesale contracts with Nike and Adidas.
Which is an enormous capital risk if the core hypothesis that people will buy shoes sight unseen turns out to be wrong. So Swinmurn completely bypassed the infrastructure. He just walked down to local brick-and-mortar shoe stores in Boston. He literally asked the managers if he could take photos of the shoes on their shelves with a digital camera, and then he uploaded those photos to a basic rudimentary website.
It looked like an e-commerce store, but it held zero inventory. When a user actually placed an order on the website, Swinburne would physically walk back to that local store, buy the specific pair of shoes at full retail price, using his own money, walk to the post office, and mail them to the customer.
He was operating as a human algorithm. Now, economically, he was losing money on every single transaction because of shipping costs and paying full retail. But profit wasn't the goal.
Right, validation was.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The goal was to prove the behavioral hypothesis. He proved that the friction of not trying shoes on was lower than the convenience of online delivery. Amazon eventually acquired Zappos for $1.2 billion, and it was all born from a guy running to a shoe store with a camera.
It's brilliant because the cost of failure was just the price of a few pairs of shoes, rather than a multi-million-dollar warehouse lease. And closely related to the Wizard of Oz is the Concierge MVP. With Concierge, you don't even pretend there is an algorithm. You are completely transparent that you are offering a manual, highly bespoke service purely to learn exactly what the customer needs.
Airbnb is the classic concierge example. Brian Chesky and Joe Gibbia were struggling to make rent in San Francisco. A massive industrial design conference was coming to town, and they noticed all the local hotels were completely booked. They didn't build a complex global booking engine with localized payment routing.
They didn't have the time or money?
Right. They bought 3 inflatable air mattresses, threw up a static site called Airbed and Breakfast, and charged attendees $80 a night to sleep on their living room floor.
And they acted as true concierges. They made them homemade Pop-Tarts in the morning. They gave them tours of the city. They used that intense manual interaction to learn exactly what travelers valued, which informed the entire user experience of the multi-billion-dollar platform Airbnb became.
Or consider DoorDash. Today, it's a massive logistics engine. But it started with a few Stanford students who kept hearing local restaurant owners complain about the lack of delivery drivers. They didn't write a dispatch algorithm. They launched a static PDF menu site called PaloAltoDelivery.com.
And when someone called the phone number listed on that PDF, it didn't go to a dispatch center. It literally rang the founder's cell phones.
While they were in class.
Yeah. They would physically drive to the restaurant, buy the pad thai, and deliver it to the dorms themselves between their college classes. They were the algorithm. Okay, I have to jump in here, though. Because while these stories are incredible, I really want to address the elephant in the room regarding the smokescreen strategy. Let's look at what Joel Gascoigne did at Buffer, putting up a website with fake pricing tiers, letting a user believe they are buying a product, and then hitting them with an email capture form.
Sure.
As a modern consumer, if I click buy and find out the product doesn't exist, I feel manipulated. I feel like I've been bait and switched. Where is the line between valid intent measurement and just flat out misleading your potential market and destroying your brand trust before you even launch?
That is a highly critical question, and it's one that founders wrestle with constantly. You are dealing with a tension between capital efficiency and consumer trust. And interestingly, this exact ethical dilemma was raised on the global hotline in the StartupLanes sources.
Oh, really?
Yeah, a founder from New Zealand called in. They were building an online learning platform and wanted to know if using fake buy now buttons was going to just ruin their reputation right out of the gate.
And what was Dr. Gupta's ruling on that? Because it's a tightrope.
His advice bridges that gap perfectly. He argues that the smokescreen is not only ethical, it is actually a responsible stewardship of your limited capital, but only if you handle the friction point with absolute transparency.
Okay.
The failure mode is when a founder tries to hide the test. They make the buy button lead to a fake 404 error page or a generic out-of-stock message, hoping the user just thinks the site is glitchy. That destroys trust.
Right? Because the user feels gaslit. Like, did I break it?
Exactly. Dr. Gupta's protocol is that the moment the user clicks the pricing tier, you trigger a highly polished, transparent pop-up. The messaging should be honest and frame the limitation as a benefit to the user. Something like, "Thank you for your interest. We are currently capping access for our pilot cohort to ensure the highest possible quality of service. Please enter your email to secure your priority place in line for our next rollout."
Ah, I see. So you completely remove the deception. You aren't tricking them out of money, and you aren't pretending the software is broken. You were just politely informing them that the velvet rope is up, and you're inviting them into the VIP line.
Precisely. You are measuring their genuine purchase intent, which is invaluable data, but you are responding with a waitlist mechanic that builds anticipation rather than resentment. You preserve the relationship while saving yourself months of wasted engineering on a product nobody might have clicked on in the first place.
That is a masterclass in framing. Okay, so let's move forward in the founder's journey. Let's say you've run the smoke screen. You put up the site, you use the transparent waitlist pop-up, and boom, 500 people click the $20 a month tier.
You got your validation.
You have mathematically validated the demand. You know they want it. But you look at your bank account and you still have exactly $0. How do you actually build a functioning, secure, scalable software product today without paying for AWS servers, database hosting, and expensive freelance developers?
This is where we uncover what is arguably the most revolutionary structural shift in the modern technology landscape. I mean, over the last decade, the marginal cost of software distribution and infrastructure has crashed to effectively zero.
Zero. I want to make sure I'm hearing that right for the listener. Literally $0 to launch.
Literally zero. Let's contextualize this for a second. 10 years ago, if you wanted to launch a SaaS application, you needed a minimum of $10,000 to $15,000 just to configure your Amazon Web Services instances, buy software licenses, and set up your deployment pipelines before you even wrote your first line of product code.
It was a huge barrier to entry.
Massive. But today, a solo founder with a laptop can stitch together what the sources refer to as the perpetual free tier developer matrix. You can deploy a highly secure, revenue-generating MVP in 14 days without spending a single dime on infrastructure.
When I was reading the breakdown of this free tech stack in the source material, I was taking furious notes because it fundamentally changes the barrier to entry. I want to break down exactly how this modular nervous system works. How do we build a modern web app for $0? Let's start with the front end where the website actually lives and breathes on the internet.
Well, in the old days, you rented a server. You paid a monthly fee, regardless of whether one person visited your site or a million. Today, you completely bypass server instances. You use platforms like Vercel or Cloudflare pages.
And how do they work mechanically? Like, why are they free?
They operate on what are called edge networks. So instead of your website living on one specific computer in Virginia, let's say, these platforms distribute your site's code across hundreds of data centers globally at the edge of the network, physically close to the user.
Okay.
So when someone in Tokyo loads your site, they get it from a server in Tokyo. It's blazingly fast. And the business model of Vercel and Cloudflare is to capture massive enterprise clients. To build goodwill with developers so they eventually build those big clients in, they offer incredibly generous free tiers. Vercel will give a solo founder unlimited deployments, over 100 gigabytes of bandwidth a month, and free SSL security certificates, completely free forever.
Okay, so the front end is hosted globally, secured, and lightning fast for $0. But a web app needs a memory, right? It needs to store user data, save preferences, hold information. What about the database?
For that, you plug into platforms like Supabase or NeonDB. Supabase is an open-source alternative to Firebase. On their free tier, they provide you with a fully functional PostgreSQL relational database, which is industrial-grade data storage.
That's the real deal.
It is. They give you half a gigabyte of storage, unlimited API reads, and real-time data subscriptions, completely free. You only pay when you scale to massive enterprise usage.
That handles the data. But what about security? Because this is where I think a lot of non-technical founders panic. I don't want the liability of writing custom password hashing code. If I mess up, my users get hacked and my startup is dead.
And you absolutely should not write your own authentication code, ever.
Yeah, that seems risky.
It's extremely risky. Instead, you integrate a service like Clerk, or you use Supabase Auth. Clerk is a drop-in authentication provider. They handle everything: Google single sign-on, Apple logins, passwordless email magic links, two-factor authentication. It is all bank-grade encrypted security. And they offer this completely free for up to 10,000 monthly active users.
10,000 users. I mean, if I have 10,000 users, I'm already raising a Series A or driving a very nice car. So authentication is solved, which leaves the most critical piece of the puzzle: actually collecting the money.
For that, the undisputed king is Stripe. Specifically, Stripe Checkout. Setting up a Stripe account costs $0 a month. There are no monthly subscription fees at all. You only pay a standard transaction fee, roughly 2.9% plus 30 cents, when a customer actually successfully pays you.
So the infrastructure risk is perfectly aligned with your success. If your app launches and makes absolutely $0, your server cost is $0, your database cost is $0, your auth cost is $0, and your payment processing cost is $0. You lose nothing but your time.
Exactly. You are essentially outsourcing entire departments of your company. DevOps, security, database administration, payment routing to autonomous systems that only bill you a fraction of a cent once you are already rich. Vercel for hosting, Supabase for data, Clerk for auth, Stripe for money. You weave these APIs together, and you have a scalable architecture.
But there is still one missing link in this chain, though. Even if Vercel and Supabase are free, I still have to write the code that connects them together. I have to design the user interface. If I am a non-technical founder or a business domain expert, I still have to hire a developer to build the app, right? And developers aren't cheap.
This is where we step onto the absolute bleeding edge of the source material. We are talking about the 48-hour AI assembly line. The requirement to manually type syntax to build software is evaporating as we speak. Generative AI tools, specifically advanced coding models like Cursor or Anthropic's Claude 3.7, now effectively act as your zero-cost, senior full-stack engineering partner.
So wait, I literally just type a prompt and the AI builds my startup. That sounds a little too good to be true.
It is slightly more nuanced than that. The failure mode for founders using AI is writing vague, lazy prompts. If you just say, build me a social network for dogs, the AI will hallucinate a mess of generic, unscalable code.
Right, it doesn't know the constraints.
Exactly. The secret, according to the deep dive frameworks, lies in what is called context constraint execution prompting.
Break that down for me. How do I actually prompt the AI to build this frugal stack we just talked about?
You must act as the system architect, giving the AI absolute boundaries. First, the context. You are an expert senior full-stack engineer tasked with building a single-page SaaS application.
Setting the role.
Right. Then the constraint, which is the most vital part. You must only use free-tier technologies. Use Next.js for the framework, Tailwind CSS for styling, Supabase for the database, and Clerk for authentication. Keep all logic serverless to ensure zero hosting costs.
Oh, wow.
And finally, the execution. Begin by writing the schema for the database.
Oh, I see. So you are fencing the AI in. You are forcing it to obey the frugal engineering mandate.
Exactly.
Yeah.
When constrained properly like that, these models will literally write the production-ready code, generate the SQL commands to configure your database, structure the user interface, and provide you with step-by-step terminal commands to deploy the entire package directly to Vercel. A solo founder with strong logic skills but zero coding experience can now architect and deploy complex software over a weekend.
The democratization of that power is incredible, like truly mind-blowing. But it immediately raises a massive red flag for me as a consumer. If the barrier to entry has truly dropped to zero, if literally anyone with an internet connection can use AI to build and launch an app for free over a weekend, doesn't that mean the market is about to be flooded with an ocean of terrible, generic, buggy apps?
Yes.
Because as a user, if software is infinite, my patience for bad software is going to be zero.
That is an incredibly astute observation. And it aligns perfectly with the consensus emerging in developer communities like Hacker News right now. Software is no longer scarce. It is hyperabundant. And because of that abundance, user tolerance for friction has plummeted. 10 years ago, if you launched an ugly, slightly broken app that solved a niche problem, people would suffer through using it because they had no other options.
Right. The minimum viable product could just be viable. It could barely work, but you'd use it.
Today, if your app crashes during the sign-up flow, or if the interface looks like it was designed in 2004, the user will just close the tab and find a competitor in 5 seconds. You haven't validated that your core idea is bad. You have only validated that modern consumers despise broken software.
Which makes sense.
Therefore, the standard has fundamentally shifted.
Yeah.
We are no longer building minimum viable products. You must build a minimum lovable product, an MLP.
A minimum lovable product. I love that framing. So how does that change the development strategy for our frugal founder?
It means you must drastically reduce the surface area of your MVP. You cannot launch a sprawling app with 20 mediocre features. You must ruthlessly cut it down to one single, tiny slice of core functionality.
Just one thing.
But that one single slice must be exceptionally well designed, perfectly reliable, and deliver instant, undeniable value to the user. It must be lovable from the first click.
Do less, but do it flawlessly. Okay, so let's say our founder has done exactly that. They've used the AI assembly line, they've integrated the free tier stack, and they have deployed a beautiful, highly focused, minimum lovable product to the web for exactly $0. It's live, but it's sitting on a server somewhere, completely invisible. Nobody knows it exists. If I am committed to the $0 budget, I can't just hand Mark Zuckerberg $5,000 to run targeted Instagram ads to get my first 100 users.
And you absolutely shouldn't. If you spend $5,000 on digital advertising to acquire your first cohort of users, you have completely sabotaged the validation process.
Really? How so?
Because paying for cold traffic obscures the true utility of your product. If users sign up from an ad, you don't know if they genuinely desperately need your software or if they were just temporarily hypnotized by a very clever, highly optimized ad copy.
That makes perfect sense. Paid ads pollute the data. You need organic desperation. So how do we find these people? This brings us to the concept of guerrilla distribution and $0 customer acquisition cost, or CAC.
The sources outline 3 highly specific tactical frameworks for achieving $0 CAC. And the first one relies heavily on human psychology. It is called warm infiltration.
Warm infiltration. Sounds like a spy movie.
A little bit, yeah. To understand warm infiltration, we first have to understand its opposite, the cold email blast. Founders love to scrape 1,000 emails and send out an automated blast saying, "Hi, I built this new software, please buy it."
Which is the fastest way to get marked as spam, ruin your domain reputation, and have everyone hate you. I mean, as a user, my guard is completely up on social media or in my inbox. If a stranger slides into my DMs pitching their startup, my immediate visceral reaction is that they are a spammy scammer. How does a founder do outreach without coming across as a complete nuisance?
The secret is entirely in the intent and the phrasing. Warm infiltration is not a sales pitch. It is a peer-to-peer rescue mission. You are not looking for general audiences. You go onto platforms like Twitter, Reddit, or LinkedIn, and you use advanced search queries to find users who are actively, publicly complaining about a highly specific problem.
What does a query like that actually look like?
You search for literal expressions of frustration. Things like, "I hate using competitor name," or "Is there any way to fix specific workflow issue?" or "Why is it so hard to task?" When you find that user, you do not reply publicly with a link and you do not pitch a subscription. You send a highly personalized, empathetic, direct message.
Give me an example of the script. How do I disarm them so they don't block me?
You focus strictly on the shared pain. You say something like, "Hey, Sarah, I saw your post complaining about how painfully slow it is to export data from Salesforce. I actually built a tiny free tool over the weekend specifically to fix that exact issue, honestly, just because I had the same problem. It was driving me crazy. There's no credit card required, no sign-up needed. Here is the direct link if you want to test it. If it helps you out, I would just love your raw feedback."
Okay. The psychology there is completely different. You are establishing yourself as a peer who's suffered from the same issue. You are offering a gift, a tool with zero friction, no sign-up, no paywall. It triggers the reciprocity reflex. They try the tool, it solves their pain, and suddenly they are your biggest advocate.
Exactly. You are converting frustration into loyalty, one human at a time. Now, the second tactic scales that concept up. It is called ethical platform hijacking. You identify where your target customers already aggregate in massive numbers, and you embed yourself organically within that ecosystem.
Reddit is usually the prime target for this, right? But Reddit users are notoriously hostile to marketers. I mean, if they even smell self-promotion, they will downvote you into oblivion and ban your account.
Which is exactly why it must be ethical and value-driven. You don't go to the accounting subreddit and just post a link to your new accounting software. Instead, you spend 3 days writing a deeply researched, highly educational, comprehensive post about a complex industry problem, say, the definitive guide to reconciling international tax discrepancies for freelancers.
Giving them real value.
You provide massive standalone value in the text itself. The reader learns something profound without ever leaving Reddit.
And then only at the very bottom, as an afterthought, you organically embed the link. Like, by the way, if you don't want to do this manually in Excel, I built a free tool that automates this entire process. Here is the link.
Precisely. You earn the right to share the link by paying for it upfront with high-quality content. And a subset of this strategy, highly popular in B2B tech, is what the sources call the GitHub open source Trojan horse.
I found this part fascinating in the material. How does the Trojan horse work?
It is brilliant architectural marketing. You build a highly useful developer tool or a piece of infrastructure code, and you release it completely free and open source on GitHub. Developers love open source, so they flock to it, they star the repository, and they share it.
But how do you monetize free code if they're just downloading it for free?
Inside the repository's README documentation, you place a very clear caveat. You say, this code is free forever, but deploying it, managing the servers, and maintaining the security updates requires technical overhead. If you want this exact tool, but fully hosted, managed, and supported by our team, click here for our commercial SaaS version.
It's the ultimate upsell. Developers come for the free code, realize that maintaining servers is a nightmare they don't want to deal with, and happily click over to pay you $50 a month just to handle it for them. You acquire highly qualified enterprise leads for $0.
And that philosophy feeds directly into the third tactic, the free tool marketing engine. Historically, startups try to build SEO by writing hundreds of mediocre blog posts, hoping Google ranks them in 6 months. The frugal alternative is to build a single utility micro tool. You find one tiny, annoying micro problem your target demographic faces, and you build a free, instantly usable web tool to solve it.
The classic example mentioned in the sources is HubSpot. Before they were a multi-billion-dollar CRM behemoth, they needed to acquire leads for inbound marketing. So they built a free tool called the Website Grader.
Exactly. You just enter your URL, and the tool instantly scans your website and gives you a free, beautifully formatted report card on your SEO performance, mobile responsiveness, and speed. It costs HubSpot almost nothing in compute power to run.
But the genius is the capture mechanism. To see the detailed breakdown of why your site scored poorly, you have to enter your email address. Millions of business owners use that free tool, and every single one of them was instantly funneled into HubSpot's main paid software pipeline as a highly qualified lead. They proved they cared about marketing just by using the tool.
It's an acquisition engine that runs on utility rather than ad spend. But if we want to talk about the absolute masterclass in $0 customer acquisition, we have to talk about Nathan Barry and the story of ConvertKit.
Oh, this story is incredible. It perfectly encapsulates the grit required for this model. ConvertKit is an email marketing platform designed specifically for creators. And Nathan Barry started it as a public challenge. He declared he was going to build a SaaS company from scratch with a strict, hard-capped budget of exactly $5,000.
Right. And he spent $2,000 of those dollars just to hire a bit of outsourced developer help to speed up the initial build. So his marketing budget was effectively zero.
Nothing left.
He couldn't buy ads against massive competitors like MailChimp or Aweber. So he utilized pure, grueling, manual outreach.
He targeted high-profile bloggers who were frustrated with the clunky interfaces of legacy email providers. But he didn't just email them a link to his software. He understood that the biggest friction point for a creator is the technical headache of migrating their list and their automated email sequences from one platform to another.
So he offered a concierge onboarding service. He would cold email a prominent blogger and say, "I know you hate your current email provider. If you switch to ConvertKit, I will personally log into your old account, export all your subscribers, manually recreate all your web forms, and rebuild all your automated email sequences in my platform entirely for free."
He did the unscalable, incredibly tedious manual labor that no massive corporation would ever offer. He migrated them one by one, by hand. He earned their business through sheer hustle.
And the compounding effect of that hustle is staggering. Today, ConvertKit, which is now rebranding as Kit, is a completely bootstrapped, founder-controlled entity generating well over $35 million in annual recurring revenue. $35 million, born from a $5,000 seed budget and a founder willing to manually copy-paste email templates late into the night.
It is the ultimate validation of the frugal model, which transitions us beautifully into a deeper exploration of these success stories. The sources are packed with these examples, so let's move into our case study lightning round. We are going to dissect the architectural decisions of billion-dollar enterprises that started with minimal to zero capital. We're going to prove definitively that operational constraint drives structural innovation.
Let's start by examining the theme of unbundling and simplicity. And there is no greater monument to simplicity than Craigslist.
Oh, Craigslist.
If you look at Craigslist today, in the modern web era, it still looks like it was designed by a computer science student in 1995. It is bare text, hyperlinked, with zero aesthetic design.
And that is because it fundamentally hasn't changed from its genesis. Craig Newmark didn't sit down and architect a massive, multi-sided marketplace database with user profiles and algorithmic matching. In 1995, he just wanted to help people in San Francisco find out about local tech events. So he used a rudimentary Unix email client called Pine, and he just started manually CCing a list of his friends with a text-based newsletter of events.
It was entirely manual. But the demand for localized information was so high that people started emailing him back asking, "Hey, Craig, can you put a note in the next email that I'm looking for a roommate?" Or, "Can you mention I'm selling my couch?"
So Craig literally just copied and pasted their text into his outgoing email blast. He was the human routing layer. It only became a website when the sheer volume of email submissions physically broke his inbox limits. He let the market pull the product out of him rather than pushing a complex product onto the market.
We see that exact same pattern with Product Hunt. Ryan Hoover wanted to create a centralized place for tech enthusiasts to discover and discuss new applications. The traditional approach would involve months of coding a social network, building upvoting algorithms, user authentication, and comment threading.
Which takes a lot of time. But Ryan bypassed all of it. He used a 20-minute free tool called LinkyDink. It was just a collaborative daily email digest. He invited a dozen of his friends who were active in the startup scene to share links. They shared the email. 2 weeks later, that simple LinkyDink list had 2,000 highly engaged subscribers, including some of the most influential venture capitalists in Silicon Valley. He validated a multi-million-dollar community platform using a free email widget.
Nomad List is another masterclass in the unbundling of complex data. Peter Levels was living as a digital nomad traveling the world, and he realized there was no centralized database comparing the cost of living, internet speed, and safety of different global cities.
That sounds like a massive data aggregation problem. You would think you need a massive relational database and a team of researchers.
He built a Google Sheet,
A Google Sheet.
a publicly editable Google spreadsheet. He shared it on Twitter. The Nomad community flocked to it, filling in the data for cities all over the world themselves. Once the spreadsheet went wildly viral and he had validated the intense demand for the data, he wrote a single-file PHP script to pull the data from the Google Sheet and display it as a visual grid on a website. He turned a free spreadsheet into a highly profitable, scalable business.
It is a recurring theme that is almost comical. The most successful founders are often the ones who are embarrassingly pragmatic. They treat the act of writing complex, proprietary code as an absolute last resort.
Because they understand that code is a liability. Code has to be maintained, updated, and secured. Code is an expense until the exact moment it generates revenue. Let's look at another vector of this pragmatism, leveraging existing platforms. Platform piggybacking. The story of Midjourney is perhaps the most relevant modern example here.
Midjourney is one of the premier AI image generators in the world right now. To handle millions of users generating high-resolution images simultaneously, you would assume David Holtz, the founder, spent millions building a custom web interface, a mobile application, a scalable backend, and a robust user authentication layer.
He bypassed all of it by making a brilliant architectural decision. He built the entire generative AI interface directly inside a Discord server.
Explain the mechanics of that, like why Discord?
Think about what Discord already provides for free. They handle millions of concurrent users. They handle instant messaging infrastructure. They handle user accounts, passwords, and security. By building Midjourney as a simple bot within a Discord chat room, Holtz outsourced 90% of the software engineering burden. A user just joins the server, types a text prompt into a chat box, and the bot replies with the generated image.
So they didn't have to build an app, get it approved by Apple, maintain a front-end website, or deal with login servers. They just plugged their AI model into Discord's massive pre-existing pipes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And by utilizing that pre-existing infrastructure, Midjourney scaled to well over $200 million in revenue without taking a single dime of venture capital. It's the ultimate infrastructural hack.
And finally, we have to talk about the pure do-it-yourself hustle, the sheer brute force of founders unwilling to spend money. Shutterstock is a prime example. John Oringer realized in the early days of the web that digital creators desperately needed cheap, royalty-free stock photos. The traditional model was Getty Images, which was incredibly expensive and required a massive network of professional photographers and studios.
Oringer had no capital to hire photographers, so he bought a basic consumer-grade digital camera. He walked around the streets of New York City day after day and personally took 30,000 photographs himself.
30,000 photos. That is insane dedication.
He photographed everything. Brick walls, coffee cups, taxis, park benches. He uploaded that initial library of 30,000 images to a basic subscription website he coded himself. That initial seed of DIY content unlocked the cash flow necessary to eventually build what is now a $1.5 billion publicly traded enterprise.
Or MailChimp. I mean, the founders were running a small web design agency, and their clients kept asking them to build custom email newsletter templates. They realized there was a market for a standalone email tool. Did they raise a seed round to build it? No. They salvaged old, discarded code from a failed e-greeting card project they had lying around in their
I
archives.
love that.
They repurposed the code to send emails instead of greeting cards. MailChimp ran entirely bootstrapped, using its own cash flow for 20 years, and eventually sold Intuit for $12 billion.
$12 billion originating from recycled, failed e-greeting card code. That is the absolute definition of ruthless operational pragmatism.
And what's fascinating is that this level of extreme pragmatism isn't just about how you write code or acquire users. It has to extend into every single operational facet of the business. Which brings us to a really incredible section of the source material. We're going into the global hotline. Dr. Shishir Gupta spends time fielding direct, panic-inducing questions from early-stage founders operating in tech hubs all over the world.
These hotline interactions are a masterclass in stripping away founder anxiety and replacing it with focused prioritization. The recurring theme in Dr. Gupta's advice is identifying what actually matters in the early days versus what founders think matters.
Let's start with the legal anxiety because this paralyzes so many people. A caller from Austin, Texas reaches out. They have exactly $500 in their personal savings account.
Yeah.
They want to launch their MVP, but they are terrified of liability. They asked Dr. Gupta if they should spend that last $500 incorporating a formal LLC and hiring a lawyer to draft custom terms of service and user contracts.
It is such a common fear. And Dr. Gupta's response is an unequivocal, resounding no. He tells the founder, under no circumstances should you drain your limited capital on legal incorporation before you have validated commercial demand. Use a free, standard online template for your terms of service for the beta launch.
But what if they get sued? I mean, that's the fear, right? Someone uses the app, something breaks, and a massive lawsuit destroys their life.
Dr. Gupta reframes the risk profile. He tells the founder, in the early validation stage, your biggest existential risk is not legal liability. Your biggest risk is absolute market indifference.
Nobody cares enough to sue you.
Exactly. Nobody's going to sue a startup that has 3 users and generates 0 revenue. You are invisible. The goal is to get the customers first, prove the model works, and then use the revenue generated for those customers to pay the lawyers to build the corporate structure. Don't build a legal fortress around a patch of dote.
That is incredibly liberating advice. Get traction first, worry about the LLC later. Next up, we have a technical dilemma regarding mobile distribution from a founder in Melbourne, Australia. They wanted to build a localized marketplace app, but they hit a wall. Registering an Apple iOS developer account costs money, and getting a new app approved through Apple's review process can take weeks of frustrating delays and rejections.
For a frugal founder trying to iterate rapidly, the App Store is a massive bottleneck. Dr. Gupta's solution is architectural judo. He says, skip the App Store entirely. Do not build a native iOS app. Build a PWA, a progressive web app.
Let's explain the mechanics of a PWA for the listeners, because it feels like a cheat code.
A progressive web app is essentially a highly optimized website that mimics the behavior of a native application. You build it using standard web technologies, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, but when a user opens it on their mobile browser, like Safari or Chrome, they can tap Add to Home Screen.
And it places an icon on their phone right next to their native apps.
Exactly. It operates full screen without browser toolbars. It can work offline, it can cache data locally, and crucially, it can send push notifications. You get 90% of the functionality of a native app, but you completely bypass Apple's $99 fee, their 30% revenue tax, and their weeks-long approval delays. You control your own distribution channel.
Absolute freedom from the walled garden. Okay, here is a psychological challenge from a solo founder in Seoul, South Korea. They are operating completely alone, but they are trying to land lucrative enterprise B2B contracts. The problem is, these enterprise buyers demand a guarantee of 247 high-touch support before they will sign a deal. The founder has no money to hire a support team. How do you fake the illusion of massive scale?
You utilize asymmetrical communication tools. Dr. Gupta advises the founder to embed a free live chat widget, something like Crisp or Talk.to, directly onto their landing page and inside the software dashboard.
And how does one person manage a live chat 24/7?
You route the incoming chat notifications directly to an app on your personal cell phone. You turn the notification volume all the way up. So when an enterprise client on the other side of the world encounters an issue and types into the chat box, your phone buzzes in your pocket. You can be standing in the produce aisle at the grocery store, and you pull out your phone and reply within 2 minutes. Hi, this is the support team, looking into your database issue right now.
And from the client's perspective, they're interacting with a massive, highly responsive support center operating out of a glass tower. They have no idea it's one person holding a bag of apples. You project massive scale using free routing tools.
It is the Wizard of Oz strategy applied to customer service. But perhaps the most universally critical piece of advice from the hotline comes from a caller in Atlanta. They're ready to launch their MVP, and they ask the classic question: should I keep the product completely free for the first 6 months just to build up a massive user base and show traction?
Oh, this is the freemium trap. And Dr. Gupta's response should literally be framed and hung on the wall of every startup incubator on the planet, he says. Charge money from day one.
It is a fundamental law of validation. If you give a product away for free, the feedback you receive is statistically worthless. Free users will lie to you out of sheer politeness. They will tell you the app is interesting or has potential because it costs them nothing to be nice.
But polite feedback doesn't pay for server costs.
Exactly. Paying customers, however, are brutally honest. The moment someone hands you their credit card, their expectations shift. They will tell you the unvarnished truth about exactly what is broken and what is missing. Dr. Gupta notes that if a user refuses to pay even a nominal fee, say $1 a month for your solution, you do not have a pricing problem. You have a fundamental value problem. You haven't solved a pain point severe enough to warrant commercial exchange.
So the credit card transaction is the ultimate validation metric. But beyond the first dollar, how do you mathematically track if your Shoestring MVP is actually achieving long-term success? We know vanity metrics like total downloads are basically useless. What is the actual telemetry of success?
The sources rely on two absolute mathematical benchmarks to diagnose the health of a startup. The first is designed to measure sheer emotional reliance on your product. It is called the Sean Ellis Product Market Fit Score.
Sean Ellis was the marketer who helped scale a Dropbox and Eventbrite.
Right. Yes, he is a pioneer of growth hacking. The test is elegantly simple. Once you have a cohort of active users, you send them a survey with one very specific question. How would you feel if you could no longer use this product tomorrow?
You are measuring the pain of removal.
Exactly. And you give them 3 multiple choice options: very disappointed, somewhat disappointed, or not disappointed. The benchmark is rigid. If 40% or more of your users answer very disappointed, you have achieved true product market fit. You have transitioned from a nice-to-have novelty into an indispensable utility. Your product has become a verb in their daily workflow.
But what if you score a 20%? What does that mean psychologically for the user?
It means they like your product, but they don't need it. If you disappear tomorrow, they will shrug and go back to using Excel. You cannot build a billion-dollar company on somewhat disappointed. You have to iterate until you hit that 40% threshold of absolute necessity.
And what's the second diagnostic metric?
The day 30 retention curve. This measures behavioral reality over time. A lot of founders can hype up a launch, get 1,000 people to sign up on day 1 and celebrate, but the only metric that matters is how many of those people are still logging in on day 30.
What is the failure threshold here? When do you panic?
For a standard SaaS product, if your day 30 user retention falls consistently below 10%, your core experience fundamentally lacks underlying utility. The bucket is too leaky. You are pouring water into a sieve. If you hit that wall, you cannot just buy more ads to fix it. You must apply what the sources call the pivot protocol.
A pivot, changing direction.
Yes, you don't just keep grinding blindly. You analyze the data. You might execute a zoom-in pivot. This happens when you realize that users are completely ignoring 90% of your complex app, but they are obsessively using one tiny obscure feature.
Like Instagram. People forget that Instagram didn't start as a photo sharing app. It started as a massive cluttered location check-in app called Burburn. But the founders looked at the data and realized nobody cared about checking in, they only cared about the photo filters. So they threw away the entire app, zoomed in on the photos, and created Instagram.
That is a perfect zoom-in pivot. Conversely, you might need a customer segment pivot. Your product might be perfectly designed, but you are selling it to the wrong demographic. You built a tool for college students, but they have no money. You pivot the marketing and sell the exact same tool to corporate HR departments, and suddenly it explodes.
I want to pause here because discussing the pivot protocol brings up a massive psychological tension for me. From the time we are children, society, sports coaches, and movies constantly drill this narrative into our heads like, never give up, winners never quit. It's the romanticized vision of the stubborn founder pushing a boulder up a hill. But here, the math is saying the exact opposite. We are saying if your day 30 retention is below 10%, you need to abandon the boulder and find a different hill. How does a founder reconcile that? How do you know when to grit your teeth and push through the pain, and when to accept the cold, hard math and pivot? The psychological toll of that decision must be immense.
It is arguably the hardest emotional tightrope a founder has to walk. It is where most founders break. The distinction, the way you survive that tension, lies entirely in what you are choosing to give up on. The framework is this. You must be obsessively, passionately, and stubbornly in love with the problem you are trying to solve. But you must remain entirely ruthless, cold, and emotionally detached from your specific solution.
Love the problem, not the solution. That is a profound distinction.
It changes everything. Let's say you are deeply passionate about the problem of helping single parents save money. You launch a complex budgeting app. After 30 days, your retention rate is an abysmal 5%. If you love your solution, if your ego is tied to the code you wrote, you will grit your teeth, refuse to pivot, burn through your cash trying to force people to use a broken app, and the company dies.
But if you love the problem,
If you love the problem, you look at the 5% retention and say, okay, the app failed. The code was the wrong vessel. You throw the app away without shedding a single tear. You pivot the solution. Maybe the solution is a curated weekly email newsletter. Maybe it's a concierge service where you manually review their bills. The stubbornness, the grit, the never-give-up mentality should be applied exclusively to the mission of saving them money, never to the software architecture itself.
the code is just a temporary tool. The mission is the company. That brings incredible clarity to the founder's journey. Okay, as we start to pull all these threads together and wrap up this deep dive, the ultimate unified lesson for you, the listener, is beautifully simple. Build, ship, learn, repeat.
At maximum velocity.
Exactly. We have to reframe how we view limitations. Constraint is not a punishment inflicted upon you. Constraint is a profound strategic gift. A shoestring budget is a forcing function. It violently strips away the vanity. It saves you from the delusion of building a $120 million aircraft aluminum juice press that nobody needs, and it forces you to get right down to the raw bleeding nerve of what real human beings will actually pay you to solve.
And if we connect all of this, the frugal engineering, the infinite runway, the AI assembly line, to the bigger macroeconomic picture, it raises a fascinating and perhaps slightly provocative question about the future of business itself. We spent this entire hour analyzing how massive capital was traditionally the enemy of early-stage innovation because it made founders lazy. It allowed them to hire engineers to write code instead of forcing them to talk to the users.
The capital acted as a wall between the founder and the market.
Precisely. But now, we are crossing the threshold into an era where artificial intelligence has made the act of coding, deploying, and scaling software virtually free. The barrier to creating complex technology has mathematically dropped to zero, which means the new constraint in the market is no longer financial capital. It is no longer deep technical skill or engineering pedigree.
If everyone can build an app for free, what is the differentiator?
The new ultimate constraint is human empathy. In a near future where literally anyone on Earth can architect and deploy a fully functional, highly complex software platform over a single weekend for exactly $0, the ultimate competitive advantage will no longer belong to the best coder. Will the winner simply be whoever is willing to listen to the customer the most intensely? Whoever can identify the human pain most accurately?
The winner isn't the best engineer anymore. It's the most empathetic listener. That is an incredibly powerful, paradigm-shifting thought to leave on. The democratization of technology means that caring about the user is the only moat left. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive today. We want to challenge you directly. Look at the persistent, annoying problems in your own life, your own workplace, or your industry. Apply these frameworks and ask yourself, how could I prototype a behavioral trap, a smokescreen, or an MLP to solve this problem by the end of the weekend for exactly $0?
You have the tools. The AI assembly line is waiting. The free peer matrix is active. You have the blueprint.
Remember, at the end of the day, diagnosing a startup isn't clean and binary like an X-ray. It is murky, chaotic, and muddy. But if you start small, if you talk to real people, and if you completely refuse to hide behind the illusion of complex machinery, you might just find that the million-dollar cure was resting quietly in your own hands all along. Keep building, keep validating, and we will catch you on the next deep dive.